There was an idea
to bring together a group of remarkable people.
To see if we could become something more.
So when they needed us, we could fight the battles
that they never could.
Marvel Studios has become Hollywood's most profitable franchise in such a short time. With the release of Avengers: Infinity War, the hype for Marvel has never been larger. The movie is set to be part one of the culmination of every movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far. Just about a decade ago, something like this would have been impossible. So how did Marvel go from filing for bankruptcy to becoming the box office giant that it is today? To understand just how impressive Marvel's rise to the top of the movie industry is, a brief history of their comic book industry must be understood. Marvel has created some of the world's most iconic superheroes over the last century. These iconic heroes were created through the medium of comic books. Comics were a profitable industry throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But in the mid-90s, the entire industry suffered a crash which would leave a scar on Marvel to this day. The market has suffered from an increase in the direct market and the comic collector boom. Originally, the publishers of comics only got paid for the issues that were sold, as retailers worked under a sale or return model, which allowed the retailer to return unsold comics to the publisher for credit with that publisher. This business model had hurt the publisher's profit. The direct market model had increased in use, which was much more profitable for the publisher, as it did not allow returns for the distributor in return for perks for the retailers. This caused smaller comic book publishers to rise, which ultimately oversaturated the market, leading to the decrease in popularity of comics. The second reason, which played an even larger role in the crash of the industry, was the comic collector boom. Older comics had become more valuable as many of them did not survive. This encouraged collectors to buy multiple copies of a book, hoping that it would increase in value over time. Many retailers over-ordered to accommodate for this boom. Publishers had also tried to appeal to the collectors by printing more and more of the same book, which defeated the supply and demand that would accommodate the value. Other strategies to try to boost the value of a book were constant relaunched books issued number 1 and variant covers of the same book. Printing so many issues of the same book caused the publishers to lose a lot of money. Marvel ended up taking a large hit in their profits to the point where they had to file for bankruptcy. On Friday, December 27, 1996, Marvel Entertainment Group filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in New York. To make ends meet, Marvel sold many film and TV rights to their most popular characters. While at the time selling them did not seem like a big deal because movies about comic book characters did not seem like a profitable market. However, this move would affect the company to this day. The move to sell the rights to characters like Fantastic Four, X-Men, and most importantly, Spider-Man, would lead Marvel's meteoric rise in Hollywood. But it definitely didn't happen overnight. In 1998, Warner Brothers released the movie Blade, a movie about Marvel's character of the same name. This movie was a box office success and had positive reviews, grossing over $131 million. Marvel only received $25,000 from the film. While this earning was disappointing, it only get worse for the company. Seeing the success of the movie, Fox took advantage of their movie rights and released the first X-Men film in the year 2000. This movie really led to comic book movies as we know them today, and it also grossed nearly $300 million. The biggest hit to Marvel would come at the hands of Sony and Columbia Pictures, who owned the film rights to the face of Marvel and their most popular character, Spider-Man. Sony would release their Spider-Man film in 2002. The movie was a huge box office and critical success, garnering over $820 million. Not only the most successful movie based on a comic book character at the time, but also one of the most successful movies in general. But because Marvel sold these properties for a flat fee, they did not make any money off of the movies themselves. Marvel was rightfully upset that movies featuring their characters were so successful, all while they enjoyed none of the benefits from it. Marvel was bleeding money while these movie studios were making millions off their properties. Marvel realized that if they wanted to make any real money off of their characters through movies, they would have to do it themselves. Originally, Marvel Studios would only be involved in the creation of theatrical releases of Marvel characters, but through agent David Mazel's proposal of self-creating movies, Marvel aimed to make their own movie. A problem was very evident. They didn't have any money to fund a blockbuster movie, and it wasn't easy for them to receive a loan because of the stigmatization of their earlier file for bankruptcy. In 2005, Marvel announced their $525 million deal with the Merrill Lynch Company that would finance Marvel Studios. In order to get the $525 million, Marvel had to put something up as collateral. Marvel had put up 10 of their properties on the line. These properties were Captain America, The Avengers, Nick Fury, Black Panther, Ant-Man, Cloak and Dagger, Doctor Strange, Hawkeye, Power Pack, and Shang-Chi. If the Marvel Studios plan had failed, they would lose the rights to every one of those characters to the bank, and their cinematic universe would be dead. Essentially, Marvel was in all or nothing. Marvel began buying back the film rights to their characters like Hulk and Iron Man. Marvel had now begun to plan out its series of films to build the Marvel Cinematic Universe. David Maisel and Avi Arad, vice chairman and chairman/CEO of Marvel Studios, had disputes on the order of the release of movies and the character lineup. Chairman of Marvel Entertainment, Isaac Perlmutter, favored Maisel's idea, which led to Arad resigning as chairman and CEO. Kevin Feige was then named president of production for Marvel Studios. Kevin Feige had already worked on previous Marvel movies like X-Men, Spider-Man, and Hulk, and more as a producer. Marvel now needed a character to base their first movie off of. This character needed to appeal to everyone and make a connection with viewers. Unfortunately, most of Marvel's A-list heroes' movie rights were sold off, so they needed to take a B-list character and attempt to turn them into a full-blown A-lister. After the critical praise of the comic storyline Civil War, Marvel saw one character who stood out from the rest. The character they chose was Tony Stark, Iron Man. In March of 2007, one of the biggest independent films of all time began shooting with Iron Man. Director of the movie Jon Favreau saw only one man who could play the role of Tony Stark. Based on their similar troubles, Robert Downey Jr. was the only man who could play the role. Of course, this was a big risk. Robert Downey Jr. had been proven to be a flight risk when dealing with his troubles. But in view of making sure the movie had the best lead possible, Jon Favreau fought to have the role go to Robert Downey Jr., or he would not direct the movie. The risk was taken for casting. This movie was also Robert Downey Jr.'s first blockbuster theatrical release, so his star power was not yet fully realized. Opening weekend for Iron Man grossed almost $100 million and grossed $300 million in theaters overall. Marvel's giant gamble had paid off. The movie was so successful that the following film, The Incredible Hulk, was able to be made, and Marvel continued to make movies whose success allowed them to pay off their loan from the Merrill Lynch Company. Marvel was able to keep the rights to the characters they had put up as collateral, and they had planted the seed for their treasured cinematic universe. Their success did not go unnoticed, as the entire Marvel company was soon bought out by the Walt Disney Company. As of today, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has become the biggest franchise in Hollywood history. The culmination of the last 10 years is set to take place with the release of Avengers: Infinity War. With their movies only becoming more and more successful, Marvel Studios shows no sign of slowing down.